and welcome to the UK Column News. It is Wednesday, the 27th of August 2014. Myself, Louise Collins, Brian Gerrish and Mike Robinson are here in Plymouth, and we have Guy Taylor on Skype with us from Herefordshire, not Bodnam Manor. Good afternoon. Well, good afternoon. Just a quick comment on the weather. It is thoroughly horrible in Plymouth. Rain, mist, clag, typical August day. But I think some people are reporting across the country. Worthing, for example, it's sunny. So forecast for UK, variable, sunshine, some places, rain others. Exactly. Meanwhile, political state of UK is bad to appalling, but I think we're going to kick off with Guy. Guy, are you there?
Hi, how are you?
We're good, and how are you, more like?
Very well indeed, yeah.
So you got arrested?
Everything's turned out very good.
Okay, you got arrested, Bodnam got stormed. Talk us through it, Guy.
Well, after we'd taken the place back, the police were very sort of communicative with us on the gate, and everything was fine. And then, obviously, these things are a live issue, and when you commit an act, then there's usually an opposing act. So I was waiting to see what their next move was, really, and it's all gone very well. The police steamed the place, overkill as usual, multiples of them, vans and everything else, helicopter, the whole performance. But when they turned up at the place, they were embarrassed to be there, is all I can say. They wouldn't answer questions, and I basically said to them, well, if you want to get into this building, then you're going to have to break the law and to get in. So we'll see where we are in this game, because this is a civil matter at the very most. And so they did. They broke in. So I said we'll go quietly, and we went downstairs, and the police then arrested me and said that they arrested me for under the Squatting Act, Legal Aid and Squatting Act 2012, and burglary originally. So that's fine, that's great. I said, well, if there were more of us than you, we'd be arresting you because you're the ones who committed the crime. Ultimately, they took me off to the police station. I was there for about 11 or 12 hours. I had a very interesting interview over the course of perhaps 3 or 4 hours. And the police in general down there were really, really nice. And it seems to me that the police officers themselves were uncomfortable with the situation. I had a firm handshake and a wink off one inspector. They were letting me use the exercise yard and stuff like this, which is unusual, really. But they were very, very nice with me. But I feel there's obviously an element, some sort of string pulling further up the food chain that's causing them difficulty. And the interview was fine. The first thing I said was, I'll answer any questions you want on the condition that you answer one for me. Are we all equal under the law? And the two girls who interviewed me, I'm not sure if the one had an earpiece in, we went through the interview. Anyway, ultimately, I was asking for evidence to support their position. They've arrested me for a crime. So what evidence have they got to support that position? And, of course, they haven't got any. And I don't say that lightly. They've got a land registration document, which I've already been in communication with the land registry and telling them there was fraud going on in the dealing. So, I mean, ultimately, we've got a position where they've arrested me for a crime that there's no cause of action. It hasn't existed. It doesn't exist. So we're going to call on September the 10th, and that's going to be very, very interesting. We've got a CPS whistleblower has given us a document which shows what criteria they need to support the position for evidence in this matter, and they haven't got it. So it's going to be very interesting on September the 10th, and anyone who can be there, I'd appreciate the support. But very interesting. I've been arrested for a crime that's not. It's a complete abusive process, because there's no cause of action. There is no reason to have arrested me, and there's no evidence to suggest I'm not the owner. So we'll see where it goes from there.
Well, Guy, thank you very much for that. Of course, for new viewers to UK Column News and overseas viewers, what we're talking about here is people's property, people's homes, businesses being stolen as a result of criminal activity running through the courts, running through the land registry, documents forged, court documents with no stamps, no signatures from judges. This is clearly well, I was going to say the start, but I think what we're demonstrating is that we are witnessing a major breakdown in law and order within Britain. And of course, if that situation exists, then everything else we're seeing happen is based on sand. So British troops deployed overseas, can we trust the government? No, we can't. What's happening with children? What's happening with whistleblowers of abuse? We'll be covering that in the programme. Same thing applies. Can we trust Britain's courts? And we think the answer is certainly not. If the police, of course, are now prepared to simply take the instruction of a senior officer and break the law themselves, this is extremely worrying. But I believe, Guy, you've got a system here for making it easier for people to report crimes to the police, particularly when the police won't record an incident as a crime. What are you suggesting?
Well, it's a bit of a by the way, really. What happened was when we got there, I realised there were 3 vehicles had been stolen from the manor. So an old Range Rover, an old BMW, and an old Fiat. And we found out they'd been sold in the village. Well, of course, without our permission, they're our vehicles, and they've been sold by the chap who claims to be the owner of the property. So, tried to report this to the police for a solid week when we got there, and they weren't interested. And I expect most viewers realise if they go down to the police station to report something, they're usually fobbed off by a girl on the desk or a man on the desk who aren't legally trained, but they say it's a civil matter. And, you know, people are getting fobbed off all the time with this. I have been myself on many occasions. So what we did, we come to a decision, and with the help of Mr. Ebert on this, we wrote out a crime report ourselves. And as you may or may not know, but when Linda was on the air with you the other day, they had a group of plainclothes officers trying to snatch her from our property. And so we had to go down the next day for her to give an interview, which we did, and I decided to report the stolen vehicles. So what we did, we wrote a crime report out, as you see it there, very basic, very simple. And while Linda was being interviewed, I went to the desk and handed over that crime report, signed, and I handed it over to the police. And within 5 minutes, the girl behind the desk had written that on the bottom and given me an incident number. So it's become a crime.
Guy, the writing of the police person is a little bit small. Are you able to tell us what she's written at the bottom of the document?
Yes, I have created this report and the report number in relation to the above report of theft of motor vehicles made by Mr. Taylor, 6808 Freeman. And they've put a receipt stamp on the bottom. So it actually gets put into the system. Hopefully it could be of help to people. Rather than going down and trying to verbally report things, which they're going to verbally batter off, by taking it down in this format and signing it, we actually took 2 copies, take 2 copies, hand over both copies, get them to stamp one and keep one, and stamp one and give you the other back. And then that way you've actually reported a crime, and, hey-ho, off we go. I mean, we've had great difficulty reporting crimes before, being told everything's civil. Even though the vehicles were on our land, and because they were saying that the land had been sold to someone else, obviously all the property they were claiming was the other owners, or the claimed owners. So here we go, going in with a crime report like that, very basic, just write it out yourself. You do get, well, we have got a stamp and signed copy back. So off we go, crime reported.
Right.
Job done.
A lot of people very cynical about what the police may have said to you and how they react. Do you seriously believe that some of the police are starting to pay attention to the sort of evidence that you have to show the fact that property has been taken from you illegally?
Well, what I think is looking at it from they look at it in sort of a programmed manner. And how I look at it is this. If someone comes up to you and says that they've got a full driving licence and they passed their test, and they could show that to a police officer, and upon examination, it's a full driving licence and they passed their test. But if you later discovered that their brother had done the test for them and they were on video discussing it, and in fact there'd been someone filming on the day and it wasn't the chap who took his test, then he wouldn't be the person with a full driving licence, because documents are false if the circumstances are absent. And this is what we're finding. We're finding such an abuse in the culture all the way through that nothing stands up to scrutiny. And so in the case with us, the only thing they're able to produce is a land registry document. Well, to get a land registry document in that manner, there has to be certain criteria. You know, there has to be a sale of transfer and completion statement. There has to be full land registry documents, title deeds showing the guy's name, and and evidence of who purchased it from me. And of course, there's none of that. All they've got is the registered owner on there as being me up until July the 3rd, and then all of a sudden it magically being somebody else without anything in between. And of course, so we're saying maybe that guy was a victim. Yeah, maybe he was. Okay, it's starting to sound more and more suspicious because of the price of the property was sold for, which is allegedly £305,000, which is clearly ludicrous. But but that's that. I mean, the police, I think, are very uncomfortable, and I say that as I said, the desk sergeant down there was very, very hospitable with me. The inspector down there was very nice. They all seem to be a bit awkward with it all. And I know that the brilliant people rang up and overloaded the West Mercia Police's website, and there was 126 comments up on the website, which is, I don't think I've ever probably had that much interest in their website before. So maybe they are. Maybe, look, let's hope the best of all people, really, and let's hope that they are looking at things and examining things. But they're certainly not being arrogant and cocky with me one-to-one. They're being very respectful, and I've had good feedback off them individually. I just feel that there's hidden hands pulling strings further up the food chain, which is causing. Of course, you're going to get the odd cocky, arrogant one, like you do on all these things. The police, as we've been saying, we believe that the police are probably being programmed into certain behaviour patterns, as you've been saying, Brian.
Okay, so just as a final comment, so the next step is another hearing in September, and what would you hope to achieve in the next court hearing?
Well, I think I don't want to get too excited. Let's wait and see, Brian. I mean, again, it's a live issue, and they're in a position they haven't been put in before, all round. We know that they haven't got the satisfactory criteria for supporting the other guy's ownership. Therefore, it's basically a fraudulent charge. And if you remember the last time I had a court case, it went on for 2 years, and I'd been saying the same thing then, that they were using fraudulent documents and that there was no evidence. It took 2 years for them to unravel that, and I was acquitted on the day when the Crown Prosecution Service withdrew the case, and I was awarded costs against the Crown Prosecution Service. So really there's a conflict of interest between me and the Crown Prosecution Service in any event. So I don't know. I think something serious will happen on the 10th, because the local newspapers have told me that there's going to be a lot of cameras there. If I'm wary of cameras, or obviously it doesn't bother me. The work and the job has been to get these things to this position and getting these things in front of the criminal court, because we know that the civil and county courts aren't fit for purpose in this country, and hopefully this will help firmly establish that. So let's see what happens.
Okay.
Good luck with that, Guy.
Thank you very much for the update. Well,
thanks.
Crown Prosecution Service brings us a nice link into the following. So we're hearing about property being taken from people. What does the British state do when somebody has been horribly abused as a child and within the so-called child protection system? Well, of course, what David Cameron's Conservative government does is he immediately starts to victimise the victim. And we can report today that there was an application for bail for Melanie Shaw. We believe this took place in number 3 court, Nottingham Crown Court, this morning. And we don't know the final result of the hearing. However, we would like to report that some rather extraordinary events took place. And this is the first one. Judge Gregory David Dickinson specifically barred the public and a Mackenzie friend who was there to assist on Melanie's behalf. They were barred from the hearing, and effectively that hearing was turned into a secret court. So we can say that a publicly listed hearing, which it was yesterday, was simply turned into a star chamber at the whim of the judge. and the lady who attended to offer assistance as a Mackenzie friend, having been asked to do so in writing by Melanie Shaw, was asked to leave the court, and it was made perfectly clear no members of the public were to be allowed in that court. So there was then some form of secretive discussion between, of course, the Crown Prosecution Service, who we understand from other members of the public to date have failed to produce any definitive evidence against Melanie. And we simply now do not know what the situation is. But has this lady, who suffered horrific abuse at the hands of her family, later within the so-called Nottingham childcare system at Beechwood, is she being nurtured? Is she being cared for? Is she being assisted to make sure that the perpetrators of her abuse are brought to justice? No, this woman has been locked up in HM Prison Peterborough since the 25th of July, and over the last few days, I think roughly 5 days so far, she's actually been kept in solitary confinement, locked up for as much as 23.5 hours per day. So if you want to know the state of Britain, of course, you're now living in David Cameron's Conservative Britain with Star Chamber courts. What do those courts do? Well, they steal property, but in this case, they would appear to be working to silence a victim of child abuse. And we understand that Melanie is getting an increasingly rough time in HM Prison Peterborough as a result of one prison warder in particular giving so-called red cards. She's been put in solitary confinement. And of course, as a vulnerable person, this puts huge pressure on Melanie's mental well-being. And I think, Mike, you pulled up some comment on figures about self-harm for people in mental care.
Yeah, well, this is Luciana Berger MP, who's the Labour Shadow Minister for Public Health, and she put in a freedom of information request on this subject, and this graph shows the number of suicide attempts and self-harm incidents in mental hospitals, and that increased by over 50% between 2010 and 2013. And this came from a number of, well, from most of the mental health trusts in the country. And the other point to be made here is that an investigation by the Health Service Journal showed that there were 3,640 fewer nurses and 213 fewer doctors working in mental health in April this year compared to 2 years ago. So, you know, you ask the question, why is this happening? Is it overcrowding? Is it that they don't have the attention that they need? Is it perhaps there are people in the mental institutions that shouldn't really be there? Perhaps they've tried to report some kind of paedophilia or something like that. We know that kind of thing happens. And so on. But as an adjunct to this, the Ministry of Justice a few days ago released their safety and custody statistics report, and I was really surprised at the increase in males self-harming while in prison and in custody. This is outside of the mental health sector, by the way, so. They're saying that the rate of male individuals self-harming increased from 58 males per 1,000 prisoners in 2005 to 71 males per 1,000 prisoners in 2010. And since that, that rate of increase slowed a little bit, but it actually increased again in the last 12-month period. But it's okay, because each prisoner only harms themselves 2.4 times. And that has been that statistic has been pretty stable since 2005. So they're really unconcerned about it, because they're not harming themselves more often. It's everybody on average has 2.4 self-harming incidents. So again, you got to ask the question, why is this increase? Is it that there are more and more male prisoners being pushed into smaller and smaller spaces? Is it that prison officers are becoming more aggressive? Is it there's more bullying going on? I noticed that the female figures are dropping, and they did initially in 2010, I think, or 2011, drop quite significantly, although that's flattened out again. So that may be an aberration, but I think that the male statistics really are a cause for concern, and we should be probably looking a bit deeper into why that might be.
Well, of course, in dealing with HM Prison Peterborough, we're dealing with Sodexo, so a privately managed prison for profit. And certainly Melanie Shaw, the moment she was in Peterborough, was denied her normal NHS medication. And since she's been in prison, she's received a smaller dose than she would have otherwise had over very many years. Why this is the case, we're not sure, but we think it's probably linked to cost cutting by the privately funded prison. And of course, if you can cut your costs, you can maximise your profit. So presumably the system now operating, and we're going to keep reinforcing, who is the government at the moment? Well, it's David Cameron's Conservative government running the PFI initiative. We can make more profit by reducing medication, and if people self-harm, well, it's not a problem. Well, here's one of the key people. Let's have a look at her. We don't know whether she's on holiday because, of course, that is a secret, and the British public who pay this woman's salary are not entitled to know whether she's working at her desk or off on a holiday. But we'd like to say there is still no response from the Home Office to the question of a chairman to head up the child abuse inquiry, which Theresa May promised. We think this is significant, and we're going to say we believe that the government policy of protecting white establishment child abusers while targeting Asian paedophiles is designed to distract the public from the high-level abusers and help create racial tension. So there's something much deeper here. We can have every police force in the country racing around after Asian abusers. What we can't have is any members of Britain's police force digging into the true events around Elm House and numerous allegations now made against abusers at the highest levels of government and Westminster. And let's reinforce it, because here we've got Melanie back on screen again. What has this lady ever done? Well, she's never done anything but been a victim of the most horrific physical and sexual abuse. Is she being protected now by David Cameron and Theresa May's government? Well, no, she's in solitary confinement. We're not making this up, we're simply reporting the facts. Is Theresa May going to improve the life of people in Britain? I don't think so, somehow. Meanwhile, some interesting events in Scotland. And we're just going to give a brief mention, of course, Alex Salmond, who's now wallowing in self-praise for his performance on television in the debate for independence for Scotland. But let's remember that Alex Salmond, together with Justice Minister Kenny McCaskill and Head of Police in Scotland, Sir Stephen House, effectively a junta of 3 men, have also held this man under house arrest now for 99 days. So Robert Green still having to report to the police every day, still unsure of the charges against him. He's waiting patiently for a court case sometime in January 2015. And we found it interesting that something seems to be turning, because the Scottish Daily Mail reporting here that one of the longest serving top judges, former judge, is actually calling, this is Lord McCluskey, sorry, is calling for Kenny McCaskill to step down. He's particularly pointing a finger at the fact that Mr McCaskill hid information that there was a push to arm Scottish police. This has upset a lot of people in Scotland, that armed police have been drifted in onto the streets without any proper public discussion. So Lord McCluskey pointing that out. He also says there's been a loss of independence under SNP, and he says that a lot of decisions are now simply being made behind closed doors. So presumably Kenny McCaskill and Salmond, of course, trained under Chatham House rules.
Sorry for the technical problems there. Mike is working hard to get it all fixed. We're going to continue now, and we're going to get on to what is going on over in up in Rotherham. So yesterday a report was released by Professor Alex Jay, who is a former Chief Inspector of Social Workers. The investigation concluded that over a 16-year period between 1997 and 2013, approximately 1,400 children were seriously abused. According to the mainstream, the children were exploited by gangs of Pakistani origins. In this Mail article that we have here, you've changed the slides, yeah. Here are some of the people involved with it. We've got here the former Labour leader of Rotherham Council who actually stood down yesterday, Roger Stone. He is an OBE, he resigned yesterday. And here we have Sean Wright, and he was actually the former head of Rotherham Children's Services and is actually now the police commissioner. He has not resigned, he will be staying in post, so he says. And this is incredible here. Martin Kimber, who is the chief executive officer of Rotherham Council, has said nobody's going to actually be made accountable for the goings on up in Rotherham, which is just shocking. No one's going to get sacked. No one's going to go to court.
This is the nub of the matter. We are seeing wherever children are being abused, the most that happens is that there's some form of civil action, which invariably means that there's going to be some attempt to buy off the victims. In Nottingham, we're dealing with roughly £9,000 to £10,000 payout per victim. Usually this is accompanied by some form of gagging order, but the whole thing is contained within a civil action, and what doesn't happen is that there's any form of movement to a criminal case against the people who've been abusing. Of course, we could have 2 charges instantly against people within the public sector. With regard to the child abuse, we could be looking at misfeasance in public office and the more serious malfeasance in public office. But these are charges at the moment which simply not mentioned. What we're saying is, oh well, we made a bit of a mistake, but we've now investigated ourselves. We're happy that we now know what the mistakes were. We promise never to make the mistakes again, and that's the whole thing swept under the carpet.
It's causing outrage at the moment that Sean Wright... Outrage. So hot in here. People are going mad because he was refusing to stand down. Head of Children's Services, now Police Commissioner. We have Ofsted reports here and Rotherham Safeguarding. If you want to put the slides up, here's the Rotherham Safeguarding Children's Board.
Just if I may, just take you through this one. I know where you're heading on this. We just had a look at this before the news today to see what Rotherham really said about itself. So here's Rotherham Safeguarding Children Board. These are the people with ultimate responsibility for safeguarding children. So if you download their report from 2012-13, here's a section from it. And we just wanted to highlight the sort of language these people are using, because what they're telling us very clearly is that they're operating a business. This is nothing to do with protecting children. No. This is about operating a business where vast amounts of money are changing hands. And of course, if you want to get into the big money with children, you're going to be seeing the big money around the abuse of children. Yeah. Everybody benefits. The foster carers benefit, the courts benefit, the abusers themselves sell a few videos, you can make money. But here's Rotherham telling us what they're really doing. They're running a business. And then look at the language they use about themselves. So you can read through this report. It says here, I'm pleased to say that Rotherham Safeguarding Board is and will continue to keep child sexual exploitation as a high priority to support the excellent work already undertaken in this area. So according to Rotherham, they believe that their performance to date has been excellent.
There's a simple reason why they believe that, and there's a simple reason why they're using all this language, Brian. It's because this area of Britain in particular is absolutely riddled with the common purpose and specifically common purpose leaders, and we're going to do more. We have some good quality work on this already, and we're going to put this out in the coming days. But that nest of vipers is absolutely common purpose at its core?
Well, of course, cpexposed.com was the website that first of all started to talk about the fact that paedophiles had moved into the common purpose networks. We talked about James Rennie, for example. Very serious events where common purpose trainees, common purpose leaders going into colleges and schools had not been police checked. And then, of course, it emerges that in their networks are paedophiles. I'll be interested to see some of those reports, Mike. But I'm also going to say thank you to Steve, who got in contact with us this morning and also pointed out the same thing, that here we are getting to very murky activity with children. And he says, let's remember the amount of work that Common Purpose has done to get into the local authority area. And this is your subject here, Lou, of Ofsted.
Ofsted, I went and had a look at the Ofsted report that was conducted back in July of 2012 at the height of the abuse, and it basically, the quality of response was, everything was okay. It seemed all okay, and it was considered to be adequate.
Well, this is Rotherham reporting itself on Ofsted. So this is the local authority saying, well, Ofsted came to us, and just have a look at the language again here. There was good collaborative work between the local authority and the police. Now, this is the insidious thing, because we haven't got the police investigating crime as an independent body. We've got the police locked into the so-called child protection system as a collaborative partner, and then something goes wrong. Are the police fully investigating? Well, of course not. They're going to protect their own people who've been part of the cover-up in the first place. Exactly. So this was Rotherham, and then this is the Ofsted report itself.
This is the Ofsted report, and if you can go to the next page, Brian. Here it was. It was Marie McGuinness, and she did this report, and it was of July 2010. So again, at the height of the abuse scandal. And here is just a basic summary of the findings, and they were absolutely the overall effectiveness of Rotherham children's safeguarding and childcare services was adequate. Everything was adequate. The only thing there which was inadequate was case planning.
Yeah.
And there you go. Everything was good and adequate. And
but of
all
course,
the services,
adequate
was fine.
is a status of being weak, isn't it? If it's adequate, it's barely adequate.
I did actually phone up Ofsted this morning and ask them for a comment or a press statement with regards to their findings and that report in 2010. A very nice lady called Kim spoke to me, and she did actually say that, oh, well, it was better. We did make reviews, and it was better than the original review in 2010. I said, but you still didn't pick it up. So I'm actually waiting for a press statement from Ofsted.
Yeah.
So hopefully we'll have that for tomorrow.
We'll probably wait. Bernardo's that you saw coming up on screen there. This is essentially, again, mention of Bernardo's by Rotherham Council themselves. So they are saying that Bernardo's completed a practice review commissioned by Rotherham Borough Council. So Bernardo's, that of course works in a collaborative sense with all the local authorities to protect children, is then brought in order to supposedly complete an independent review.
Yeah, well, I actually spoke to Bill Maloney first thing, and he told me to look up Eamon Holmes on Sky News this morning, where he laid in to head of Bernardo's, Javid Ahmed, I think his name is, and I urge people just to Google Eamon Holmes this morning, talking to the guy from Bernardo's, because Eamon Holmes basically said what we're saying. Why did they not pick it up? And when asked, should Sean Wright be removed as police commissioner, the guy would refused to answer. And this guy is supposed to be looking after children, and he's sitting on the fence protecting the people who are there to look after the children. So shame on you,
because
Bernardo's.
All of the people supposedly protecting children are making vast amounts of money out of the abuse of children. So that's the minimum we can say. But interesting article here from the Daily Mail, because now we're getting into some of the more devious side of what's going on. Here is the Mail shouting that Sue Reed was talking about the abuse of children in Rotherham, but because she's talking about Asians, she gets branded a racist and she's a despicable person. And here's the Daily Mail, they knew what was going on, etc., etc.
Why didn't they report on it then at the time?
Well, they did report on some of it, and part of what she's saying here is true, but the point I wanted to make by putting some of this up is, of course, when it has been white abusers, we don't get the reports in the Mail. We don't get the in-depth reporting. So at a time when we are now seeing across the country it is not simply Asians, this is a gross simplification. Here is the Mail piling on the propaganda, adding to the fact that, oh, it's Asians, but I tried to report it and I become a racist. And then the BBC, well, what a disgusting organisation this is, because of course we've still not got to the bottom of the cover-up over abuser Jimmy Savile. But here's the BBC stirring the pot. Rotherham social workers are all feeling bullied and they're bringing up all of the problems. Now, we know that within social services, people are being bullied in order to fulfil quotas, and ultimately that produces money. But does the BBC wade in with getting to the bottom of who is abusing the children, getting the truth out about Elm House? No, the BBC comes in from amongst the pond life, and we're going to stir the pot so that people don't know what's happening. And we'll just bring this video up, this clip up again, which we've shown before, but we got very interested that an MP, Robert Buckland, just happens to be a part-time judge, but he's been working alongside Action for Children, not for profit. It's a not-for-profit organisation, Action for Children, turnover about 197 million, and they're looking at the legal system together. So what's going on here? We've got judges working with people making their earning out of what's happening around children, setting policy. And here's Action for Children stating that by 2015 they want themselves to be the preferred partner. Here's the language, our customers. So yeah. Remember Rotherham, child safeguarding was a business. Here's a so-called not-for-profit organisation talking about our customers, and they go on to say that their priority for 2012-13 was to win as many large contracts as possible.
Can I just ask, is the child abuse, from what we see and how we speak to Bill Maloney, it's big business, it's big money, it's a lot of money to get these children. Now, the gangs and the pictures you're seeing in the paper are not of very wealthy looking guys, and if these are the guys that are procuring the children and ferrying them off, surely they would be looking, I mean, they look just scruffy individuals, you know, living in Rotherham.
How many drug dealers do you see in suits?
That's fair dues, I suppose.
It's the same type of pyramid scheme, isn't it?
The ones controlling the organisation you don't see, the ones out on the streets are the ones who take the risk. Yeah. But your point that
so this lot, I wonder, why don't they whistleblow then, I wonder? The lower levels, the guys who are being framed for all this.
Well, of course, if enough of them were being picked up, we'd start to get some movement. But remember, all of the evidence which the police hold about Elm House, all of the evidence that the police hold about senior politicians involved in paedophilia, still not coming out into the public domain. And let's return to this lady, Sarah Thornton, Chief Constable of Thames Valley Police. And we return to Oxford and Cherwell Valley College, where of course it was an Asian gentleman that reported to the police virtually 100 times that white youngsters at the college were being abused. The police simply did not investigate. This man was bullied, lost his job, and there was a clear cover-up between the local authority, Oxfordshire City and County Council, Oxford and Cherwell Valley College, and the police authority themselves. So basically the documentation's now emerging, clearly showing that Thames Valley Police simply failed to record the abuse. They didn't process documents, they didn't investigate, and the Asian trying to protect children, Thames Valley Police don't want to know. Let's put that in a simple form. Once we know the government can do this around children, well, we can't trust them on anything else. So despite those reports, who was involved in the cover-up? Well, here they are. The councils, County Council and City Council, the police themselves, the local area designated safeguarding officer for children. We've got the whole of the Oxfordshire Child Safeguarding Board, which of course includes the police. The BBC got involved, they looked at some evidence and then pulled out. ITV did exactly the same. None of the councillors wanted to take any action, and Ofsted, who were also informed, took very little action. So this is actually how you cover up corruption. Yep. And perhaps it takes Press TV to talk about what the real corruption in the police is.
Exactly. Hacking, selling of stories and connections with criminal underlords are just some of the reasons why police officers have been suspended. Documents released under the Freedom of Information Act show a total of 460 officers had faced corruption charges in the last 5 years. The Met Police apparently came out tops with 119 officers and 67 other employers having been suspended. So this is something that's close to Michael Doherty's heart, I know. And as you say, Brian, Press TV are the ones to come out and report on it.
Yeah, well, where does that take us? Probably the political scrapbook, I think.
Mike?
Yeah, political scrapbook here, highlighting the situation with the funding of conservative. The funding of conservative constituencies, and they're really pointing out here that the Electoral Commission, of course, requires people to declare donations to political parties. But in this case, they're saying that individuals are hiding, they describe it as hiding behind unincorporated associations. Now, an unincorporated association is a group of people who choose to work together. They're not incorporated, they're not a legal entity. As individuals, they are legally responsible for their own actions, any contracts they take. But this organisation, the political scrapbook here, really saying that instead of individuals having a limit of, say, £1,500 a year on what they could donate to constituencies, that in this case people are donating as much as £7,500 per constituency. And of course there are 27 constituencies that are currently operating under this sort of regime, if you want to call it that.
So we're talking fraud, really. We could loophole, but it's fraud, is it?
Well, indeed, yes. So if if we look at this website here, which is searchthemoney.com, you can look and see who is giving money to the Conservative Party. So in this case, one of these unincorporated associations here, you can look at how much money they are declaring to the Electoral Commission that they've given the Conservative Party each year for the last whatever number of years it is. So what the article that we're talking about is saying is that in fact the information on this website is wrong, because there's money being given in a covert way, effectively, and really they're certainly singling out the Conservative Party for this behaviour.
Yeah. Well, let's chop across to our mention of Mr. James Foley, I think.
Of course, LiveLeak had the video last week, and I just really wanted to highlight here that LiveLeak no longer has the video, or at least if you're in the United Kingdom, they certainly don't have the video, because this is the page that the James Foley video was on, and as you can see, it is no longer available in this country. And so I've asked LiveLeak for a statement as to why they would have taken this down, or at least censored it in this country. At least clearly must have come from a request, shall we say, from government or the police. But I think this got to be seen in the context of the comments from the police last week, and I think that this is pretty disturbing, actually, that this type of censorship is already happening in this way.
Well, we are supposed to have seen a murder of somebody on camera, evidence, supposedly. Then when we talk about that evidence, well, that has to be taken off the internet under censorship. We have a victim of abuse, somebody we should be listening to, we should be hearing their evidence in the public public arena, so they're put in solitary confinement to shut them up. Mothers put away in psychiatric units. This is us reporting from Britain, 2014, David Cameron's Conservative government. What we're seeing now is internet censorship, people speaking out about the state being locked up. It's obvious what's unfolding. And I think you've got a picture of Gaza here, Mike.
Yes, indeed. I was asking, was this Gaza? But in fact, it's South Wales. So I think this is Cardiff and Newport. And this is because the NATO conference is happening next week, the 4th and 5th of September, I believe. They're expecting 20,000 protesters. People in South Wales complaining bitterly at the security operation and the impact that it's having on their lives. But, you know, absolutely staggering that they've basically built this fence. It's a 10-mile long fence.
9 foot high.
Yes, going around the venue, but also they seem to have significant fencing within Cardiff. And the event's happening in Newport. So why they've also got a fence in Cardiff seems a bit unclear.
I don't know if you've seen the photographs. It's almost like checkpoints, people going through these big iron gates just to walk down the high street.
Well, this is what Belfast was like in the 1970s.
Yeah,
So this is exactly what it was like. Every street was barricaded off and you had to go through a security check in order to go to the shops.
So my question is, they're protecting these people. What are these people so frightened of? What do they need protecting from?
Well,
the truth?
More to the point, if people really want to protest this, I suggest that the simplest way to do this is for 1 million people, because there is an entrance through this gate. Everybody's going to go through it in their cars. That's why there are speed limits on the M4 and so on. If 1 million people simply sat down outside that entrance, peacefully, quietly, no noise, just sat down and simply said, "You're not leaving this until the wars stop. You're not leaving this fence. You built a fence around yourselves. You can stay in there like a prison. We're not moving until you stop these wars." Then maybe we might make some progress.
Mm. But credible scenes, isn't it?
Yeah.
Security. Armed police in Scotland, breakaway of Scotland, children, abuse victims locked up in prison. And of course, here's the man, David Cameron, has been wittering.
Yeah, he can't wait for the conference. He just can't wait because he gets to meet Barry Soetoro once again and all these other friends, Angela Merkel and so on.
Important friends.
Important friends, yes. Yeah. And maybe the Polish will be there now in America, and we'll have Mark Anderson on the programme tomorrow, and we might talk about this. But in America, there is a bill going through Congress, which basically it is basically a direct act of war, it looks like, on Russia, and global research highlighting that. Go and have a look at that if you want to preempt tomorrow's programme. But this is a very important conference, I think, this NATO conference, and is going to set the scene for the next few years.
And troubles in the world. I think we're going to cut there. We've had a little bit of a staccato news today because there's been a few strange things going on with technical black boxes that I've no idea what they do. So apologies for that, but we will be back hopefully with a smoother news tomorrow.
Hopefully. Yeah, can I just remind everyone about the UK Column t-shirts? They're on the website. If you get them, it's just supporting what we do, and hopefully we can upgrade our system so we don't have so many technical difficulties. And obviously the UK Column bumper stickers and leaflets are available. So if you're interested in any of these, just email Carol with an E at ukcolumn.org. That's it.
There we are. And do tell your friends about us, and thank you very much for the team from America who said, "Well done, UK Column, we enjoy watching you." And many other people in the US are also starting to do the same. So thanks for that.
Follow Brian on Twitter.
Oh yeah, Brian's twittering.
I am twittering, yes. And contrary to a lady from overseas who said that my picture, come on, what is the right word
profile
for a
picture?
My profile picture was a chicken. It is in fact Beaky from the UK Column, so I don't want any scurrilous tweets going out there trying to claim a chicken when in fact it is Beaky. But what we are starting to see is that simple factual information about what's really going on in this country is now starting to move over Twitter. And could we displace David Cameron, who's got some 740,000 misguided followers So could he be blown off his perch? I think he could. I'm going to try and do my bit with Twitter's.
So what is his? Do you know what your Twitter name and account is?
It's Brian at Brian G UKC. Brian G UKC.
There you go, guys.
Don't embarrass me on air. Okay, thanks very much
See you
for joining
tomorrow.
us. Bye bye.